Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions, and today I'm going to be doing an advanced overview of the Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson Omnibus. This is the latest printing, so I'll also be comparing it to the original printing. So let's get started. Before getting started, I want to give a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advance copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on January 31st or February 1st, depending on where you get your books. And speaking of direct market, what we're looking at here is the direct market cover. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover. That's the one that's going to be available everywhere. There is a difference in the spine designs, and the direct market cover will only be available at places like cheapgraphicnovels.com, waltzcomicshop.com, comicsbugle.com, in-stock trades, Dime Breed Collectors, organic price books, and places like that, or your local comic book shop. But besides the design of the front of the dust jacket and the spine, everything else is the same. So let's shift the focus back to this classic cover of issue 181. And I love that they went with a poster for the standard edition too, because that hasn't happened in the past. This is the third printing of this book. Now, because of some of you all have been wanting me to do overviews of just focusing on the book and then not talk about my feelings or talk about the books, I am putting timestamps into the description of the video moving forward. I've been doing it for a week now, but that seems to kind of meet people halfway. Hey, you don't have to watch my overview. You can, I tell people to put me on mute because I do get invested in these stories, and this being one of the best Daredevil stories, and what I like to call the definitive run on Daredevil, because you have creators like Roger Stern on Spider-Man, Chris Claremont on X-Men, John Byrne on the Fantastic Four, Peter David on the Hulk, and then you have Frank Miller's Daredevil. There are certain creators that I cannot not think about. Is that right? Two negatives make a positive? Sure. That always remind me of their run, and this was groundbreaking for its time, so there are things I want to talk about without going into big spoilers, but minor spoilers just in case. And that's just a reminder for people that just want to skip ahead to see the comparison, because I am going to be comparing it to my original printing. Now, one very important thing to keep in mind in the original printing is that it comes with this obi. Thank you so much for telling me that's what they call this half dust jacket in Japan. So many of my viewers commented, so that's wonderful. This is the first printing, so that's something very important to keep in mind. There was a second printing that had this cover, but it was a full dust jacket, and this is the third printing, the latest printing. So it is going to be thicker, I can guarantee you that. And this book right here has been so many places with me. It went with me to Japan, and it went with me to Canada when I was working overseas. So it is kept intact for people that are like, how can you keep your books, from breaking down? I don't know. I really don't know if there's ways that people keep their books from getting destroyed. I did take the obi off, or the dust jacket off, so I always do that when I read. Here's the comparison between the spines. Again, first printing, holy crap, that's huge compared to the new printing. And I'm sorry I don't have the second printing, otherwise I would compare it. I would assume it's somewhere in between the two, but probably closer to this one here. And then the backs of the books. Now keep in mind, the original printing, I took it, let's see, it was 2008 when I took it to Japan, so it had to come out before then, maybe 2006, 2007, I think, when they came out. This one just this year. $99.99 for the original printing, $100. Very rare these days where something has gone up in price by a penny. An American penny, but a penny nonetheless. But yes, a hero redefined, and that's exactly what Frank Miller does with his run. Now, underneath the dust jacket, you do get that image, honestly, like underneath the obi and underneath the dust jacket. I really love these, but no way in hell Marvel brings them back, by the way, because book retailers hated these things. They just started ripping and falling apart, so I thought they were really cool. So it is that image by Frank Miller, but here, you have the title there. Here you have Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, and then the Daredevil logo, the Marvel Omnibus logo. My viewers were asking me, how do I feel about this? Well, to me, the Marvel Omnibus logo was always at the bottom of the Daredevil Omnibus printing. So the red is a little darker over here. Honestly, this is more blood red. Is that a term, or is it crimson red? It looks darker than the red used here. Now, of course, this is original printing, and it's had its share of reads. But in case you wanted to see the differences in the binding, it is sewn binding, but oh my gosh, this thing is a trap, I swear. No matter how many times I've read it, that's the original printing. Let's look at the binding of the new printing. It's a better eye, which is crazy. The first printing was printed in the US. I'm not sure where the second, I can assume the second one was the Donnelly printer. This one printed at the iMac printer. But we'll be doing a comparison in a little bit. So again, check out the timestamps in the description of the video if you want to jump to the extras, the back matter, and the comparison to the original printing. But right now, I'm going to crack this open, talk a little bit about what the setup, what makes this such an important run, and show off the artwork. Before cracking this open, I did want to state the fact that we don't have a word yet whether the companion is going to be reprinted. This has Born Again and Man Without Fear and other Frank Miller stories. So no word yet, but you can make sure that it gets reprinted, and one way to do that is by voting on our Most Wanted Marvel Omnibus reprint poll. That video and the link to the poll where you can vote up to 5 books that you want reprinted will go up in February. So just a small reminder. And a small reminder to hit that like button too, please. Yeah. Sometimes remember to do that. All right, so let's crack this open. We have some black end paper right there. And then we have this same forward that we had in the original printing. He dwells in eternal night, but the blackness is filled with sounds and scents other men cannot perceive. Though attorney Matt Murdock, so spoilers for this, I guess, is blind, his other senses function with superhuman sharpness. His radar sense guides him over every obstacle. He stalks the streets by night, a red-garbed foe of evil. Wow, talk about freaking overdramatic, but loving every single word of that. Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. Just look how epic that looks. I'm so glad this came back to print. You all voted for this, and sure enough, Marvel listened. So here are the writers. Roger McKenzie, of course, finishing out his run of Daredevil. You have the pencilers, the inkers, and honestly, Klaus Janson really becoming the embellisher and finisher of Frank Miller's run, because he actually ends up penciling some of this stuff too. The letters at the time, Joe Rosen, who I found out passed away actually by reading a Marvel Masterwork. I had no idea that he passed. He was one of my favorite letterers. Jim Novak, just the name of a few of the letters. The colorist through these pages here. And then you have the editors at the time and the cover artist. There's an introduction from the trade paperbacks by Frank Miller and an introduction by Klaus Janson. Frank Miller focusing on his just opportunity to write the character, Mary Jo Duffy approaching him, and he wasn't happy with the script. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. And then over here, Klaus Janson talking about pretty much what Daredevil meant to him and what was going on at the time and how Daredevil was the comic that nobody really wanted to work on. And I guess I'll talk a little bit about that. But before I do, this does collect Daredevil 158 to 161 and then 163 to 191. And then it also collects What If number 8, the 1977 series. The book has 840 pages. So why does it skip issue number 162? Well, that's because that's the Steve Ditko issue. Uncanny Omar talked pretty one day, Steve Ditko. And I tried, when I found out about this printing, is there any way to squeeze 162 in there? And I was politely turned down because it's not Frank Miller. But I just didn't want it to be orphaned. And anyway, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. So yes, Roger McKenzie is finishing out his run on Daredevil, and this, you have to keep in mind, is all before the pages of Dark Knight and Batman Year One. This is during Jim Shooter's era, where Shooter was taking a lot of chances, but I know people speak ill of him because of the way that he ran ship, but say what you will about Jim Shooter, he got the job done, and holy crap, do we have him to thank for a lot of these runs. A lot of the people that, when you think of Uncanny X-Men, I can't help but think of Chris Claremont. So I've talked about how this is the definitive run, how this is the creator-centric run that most people will be like, yes, the one run you need to read is Daredevil by Frank Miller. As a matter of fact, if most people you talk to that have read Marvel Comics for 50 years, 40 years, however many years, more than anything, they will tell you that this is the book you need in your library. If you're just now starting to read comics, if you've been reading comics for a long time, doesn't matter. If you've never read Daredevil, this is the book to start. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Now, coming into the age of graphic novels and collected editions, there are easier points, entry points to Daredevil, but everything goes back to this. Because you see, before this, Daredevil, like it states at the beginning, was a line that's about to get canceled. Frank Miller decided to take the job of penciler, and he was about ready to move on, and then he was approached by the editors, hey, how would you like to take on as a full-time writer, and then do your own thing with Daredevil? The line's going to get canceled anyway, so they took a chance. And holy crap, did it pay off. Not just for Daredevil, but every single comic since then. Because if you read Daredevil, even the stuff by Brian Michael Bendis, Joe Quesada, Kevin Smith, Charles Soule, Ed Brubaker, doesn't matter whose run you're reading, everybody goes back to this freaking era of Daredevil, and there's a reason for that. I left out Mark Waid because Mark Waid goes the opposite way, which is a welcome breath of fresh air for a lot of people, including me. It's a lot different. It's a lot more, not lighthearted 100%, but it's different. It's not as gritty. So, through these pages, Roger McKenzie starts ending his run, and you have Frank Miller doing the artwork. He has a lot of different inkers at the time, but even as early as this issue right here, where Bullseye kidnaps the character of Black Widow, there is a fight, and it's a roller coaster fight, and holy crap, the art that goes into this is just amazing. Like, yeah, this issue right here, issue 161. The composition, the layouts of the panels, just how fluid he moves. And this next page right here with the spread of the roll, this is insanity. This is crazy to see this fight. And if you're a fan of the Daredevil Netflix series, a lot of the inspiration came from this run. I don't care what others say, oh, they borrowed elements from Bendis or Ed Brubaker. I love those runs too, but this is the run that they really borrowed a lot of elements from. And they started to change things. So by the time, this is the fight with the Hulk, and then he's recuperating. There's a solid issue here when he's thinking about Jack Murdock, his dad. So it's a little bit of a flashback fight with Dr. Octopus right here. And by the time we get to issue, I believe it's issue 166, I think. This is the last Roger McKenzie issue. And reintroducing the character of the Gladiator. There's a fill-in issue. By the way, this is issue 167, the unused cover right here by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. We get to issue 167. This is a fill-in issue by David Michelinie. Again, Frank Miller and Klaus Janson now becoming a duo. And then we get issue 168. Now we have Frank Miller writing and drawing, so just penciling, and then, of course, Klaus Janson inking in. Now the tone of the book starts to change. It starts to get darker and grittier. We're introduced to this assassin for hire named Elektra that has a lot of connections with Matt Murdock in his past. It's something that you've never seen before in the pages of Daredevil. It's been going on for 160-ish, or I guess 168 issues, and he's never once mentioned a love interest in college named Elektra. But that's okay. A lot of us would call this retconning now, right? But for some reason, Frank Miller got a pass. Because it really wasn't that cemented history when it came to Daredevil. You know, it doesn't matter who was writing the book. It always felt like they missed the part of Daredevil that was growing up that they probably should have focused on and filled in. And that's what Frank Miller does. He knew his history well enough to go back and go, okay, this is the missing era of Daredevil that I can talk about. Throw in this character right here, Elektra, and say that she was always a part of him. And now she's back as an assassin. Kind of his counterpart, actually his opposite at first. Then he gets us back to Bullseye. Now, Bullseye comes back a lot deadlier than he's ever been. But the best thing he did, besides creating Elektra, is in issue 170, we have the Kingpin, who's a Spider-Man bad guy who wasn't really that great of a bad guy to begin with. He's training in Japan, and he's coming back to New York to take over Hell's Kitchen. So, of course, there's the immediate fight in the next issue, and the choreography in this fight, I loved. This is something when I was trying to draw and break into comics when I was younger, when I was 16 and 17, I would, man, because these books came out as reprints. It wasn't until I was in my late teens that I actually had the first printings of the issues. But the fight scene between Daredevil and Kingpin in the darkness was something that I aspired to do as an artist. This is just such an amazing freaking fight. I love the way that they both, because you can see the mask, you can feel how strong Kingpin is. Every punch he lays on poor Matt is just knocked the hell out. Then the the fight doesn't end there, man. He destroys Matt Murdock. Now, one thing you may be noticing as I'm flipping through these pages is the colors seem a little bit different. Now, if you go back and watch my Daredevil overview of the Marvel Masterworks, those will have a restoration that are different than the restorations here. These feel a little more like modernized colors, but still true to the spirit of the original colors, as close to as they can get. They not like the Walter Simonson recoloring of the Thor Omnibus, but definitely a lot different than the Marvel Masterworks. So the scans they're using for this are the ones that they've used for the previous printings. They're not using the Masterworks scans for the people that wanted to know about that. Gosh, look at that. So gorgeous. So, again, the choreography, easy to follow panels. And the other thing that he does is introduce us. This is the first appearance of a character I want to talk about. But before I talk about that character, in issue 174, by now we have Gladiator teaming up with Elektra and Matt to take down these characters known as the Hand. That's right. The characters, the ninjas that go after Wolverine, they made their first appearance here. And of course, Frank Miller brings him back in the pages of Wolverine, and then eventually Claremont went on to use him, and so did Larry Hama. And in issue 176, another thing that most people would call a retcon these days, but he introduces us to this character, this blind guy that trained Matt Murdock when Matt was a kid, and his name is Stick. Now, Stick was preparing Matt, apparently, for this huge battle that's coming between our world and this other world that I won't name, and that's what this is. I mean, he changes everything. He goes from a character that's about to get canceled, his comic is not selling, to redefining the character and making it a huge seller for Marvel Comics and forever changing the way we view comics. And I say that a lot here on the channel when I'm like, there's certain creators that come on board, like Alan Moore taking over Swamp Thing, books like that. But there's a reason why. For anybody that has read them, if you were reading Daredevil at the time, I can't imagine what that was like. Reading Daredevil and you're like, yeah, sure, it's fun, bottom of the pile. But then Frank Miller takes over, gives us Gang War, gives us the Kingpin, gives us the Hand, Elektra, Bullseye, issue 181. Holy crap. I can't imagine what that was like. That must have been insane. Now, one of the things you're going to see that's missing that happens with these creator-centric type of books, and that is the letter pages. There are no letter pages. I wish those would be there, but they tend to save those for the ones that are published in chronological order. So Daredevil Silver Age 1, Daredevil Silver Age 2, Uncanny X-Men 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those will have the letter pages. These do not, and I wish they did. Let's take a look at the back matter, because I think I've said enough. Actually, before the back matter, there is the What If issue. What if Daredevil became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Now, it contains that. It doesn't contain the Ghost Rider issue. Now we can look at the extras. So welcome back, everybody that didn't want to be spoiled by looking at pictures or hearing me just gush about how great Frank Miller was. I guess I could talk a little more about that while I'm flipping through here. Here's your back matter. Here's the extras. You get interviews back here, not just with Frank Miller, but also Klaus Janson. And you get some unused artwork. You get the reprint covers right here, because this has been reprinted many times in different formats. The original cover art right there. Holy crap, to own some of these. Trying to make sure I don't flip through anything that is any kind of spoilers, but you have the thumbnail and then the finished product there. Let's skip a little bit and go to the Handbook of the Marvel Universe. So this is the art that he provided for those, including the Punisher. Marvel Fanfare number 1. That's just the cover by Frank Miller. The trade paperback of Marked for Death. This is by John Romita Jr. and Al Williamson. But also, of course, reprinting these. The Bullseye's back. This is Marvel's Finest trade paperback. And then some other kind of collected editions, reprints, including the Visionaries, which is where you get that image from, which is right there, and that image. So yes, he made the character darker. He made him more relatable. He just kind of focused less on superheroics and made it kind of his own little pocket universe of Hell's Kitchen, and having Matt to deal with the Kingpin by himself. Because yes, at any time he could have called on the Punisher, Spider-Man for help, but instead he went with Elektra and Gladiator. So we looked at the binding a little bit ago, but just in case you forgot, here's what it looks like. And now comes the part of the video where I compare it to the original printing. Okay, so just in case, old printing, new printing. iMac printer, this one here printed in the US. Black end paper. I am going to have to hold this one down, the one at the very top. It just doesn't stay that well. The same quote right there. And let's take a look at this together really quick. Daredevil by Frank Miller, Klaus Janson. I have to hold this one down too because of the end paper. But this one has been read many times. Like I said, even taken with me to different countries. And I still have to hold it down, but that's because of this paper stock and the binding on these old printings. They were still trying to figure out exactly how to print these the very best way possible. It's a little bit closer. Red is a lot more vibrant up there. This is kind of a darker red right here, but the same gutter loss can be... Actually, this is a lot worse than it is down here. Now, the paper stock. Paper stock on the original printing, holy crap. Do we still have enough trees to make paper stock like this? A really thick glossy paper. This thin glossy paper, but you know, that is a really unfair comparison. This is from like 2006. This is 2022. We don't really make books like this anymore. I assume if they were to make books like this, it would be on the price range of about $150 to $200 instead of $100. That's just me. I don't know. I'm not a paper expert, nor am I a bookbinding expert. Table of contents right there, and the introductions here by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. Again, the paper stock is so different that it looks like dark red. All right, let's look here. So I'm going to do a comparison with the different pages, but as you can see from the first page, there's art that is coming through from the opposite side, whereas here there is no... I mean, if you're paying attention, yes, you can definitely tell there is a frame down there, but the paper stock is so thick. And let's do a comparison to the colors here. And I'm sorry I have to keep holding it down. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the binding in this one is so tight. And I've stretched the spine many times, and I've read it multiple times. But the colors is what I wanted to focus on here. Not really taking anything away from the art, but the colors are just a little bit darker in the new printing than they are in the original printing. Do I suggest still getting this? Absolutely. It is an epic for a reason. This is one of the great... Here, let's do this page really quick. This is a spread page. This is one of the greatest, if not the greatest Daredevil run. So this is the way the book lays over. Still trying to shut on me over here. And yeah, less of a gutter loss in the new printing than the original printing. Let's look in the middles, and then we'll do some more comparison. You can see some of the frames coming through from the opposite side. And in here, it's finally laying down a bit better. You can see vaguely that there are frames on the opposite side of that white page. But mainly I wanted to focus on the way the books lay over. This is great. That's a pain in the butt to read, I swear. How in the world did I take... That was in the JR train when I was reading this, and on the airplane. All the way in the back, let's see how it lays over. Right, we're on page 599, and again, you can see the word bubbles, the thought bubbles, and the frames coming from the opposite page. Over here, the downside is the way the book lays over, and it's trying to shut on you. And it's not me saying, hey, you should buy this. This is superior to this. Because, I mean, it's a better binding, that's for sure. But, you know, you lose the thickness of the paper. So maybe the middle ground would be finding a second printing of it. If this stuff bothers you. Or finding a first printing if you want to go back to this. But I think the second printing probably had kind of middle of the road paper. And was a little thicker than this. But didn't try to shut on you while you're trying to read it. Hey, Stilt Man. But that's it. Actually, let's look at the... Yeah, guess I didn't have a choice there. Let's look at the extras. We'll look at this one. Alright, we're looking at the Marvel Comics Index Volume 1. This is from 1982. And again, binding and the paper right here, trying to shut on me. Whereas this lays over nice. But you can maybe see some of the words coming from the other side if you're looking for it. Is that words? Maybe it's words. Yes, it is. Okay, try to be as thorough as I can with the overview. Let me know in the comments what else you would like to see that isn't spoilery, because I do try to make my videos better, and of course, I take critique, always. Unless you're nice instead of, you know, like, hey, moron, why don't you do this? Only my wife can do that. Alright, everyone, that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and comparison to the original printing. Let me know if you've never read this book. If you still have questions, leave them down below. What do you think about Frank Miller's run on Daredevil? Was it too hyped up for you? Did it live up to your expectations? Was it just okay, middle of the road? I do love to know people's comments because not everybody agrees, right? My definitive run on a character is not someone else's, and that's okay. Difference of opinion matters, and it makes the world go round. Now let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya, right? I think that's what they sing. Anyway, yeah, I would love to know all those comments down below. Check out our Patreon and Spread Shop. We have a brand new shirt design in our Spread Shop. Just check it out. The link is somewhere in the description of the video. And everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.